Hey everyone, welcome to the 421st episode of the Internet of Things podcast. This is your host, Stacey Higginbotham, and your co-host,
Kevin Toffel.
And we have so much to talk about today. We're going to be kind of diving in deep on Amazon news and what the heck's happening with Madam A. We're also going to be talking about ARM's planned IPO. It has registered. We've got a new report on the IoT from Forrester that has some interesting tidbits, some of the same old news that we're used to, and some new insights. We're also going to be talking about what the heck we're going to do about preventing AirTag stalking. And again, it's a rumor that will not die. We're seeing another Nest smart tag. We're also seeing Abode add some Nest integrations. And Kevin played with the Switchbot Hub 2 with Matter and its smart blinds option, and he's going to tell you his thoughts on that. For the industrial folks, I have got a great interview with Jonathan Berry, who is the founder and CEO of Goliath, talking about the company's new funding round and a lot about what adding connectivity has done to and for the embedded market. We're also going to hear from our sponsor, Computex. Woo-woo! But first, a message from another one of our sponsors. This week's sponsor is Blues Wireless. Blues provides cellular products that work so developers can build IoT products that change the world. It's founded by industry pioneer Ray Ozzie. Blues provides the hardware and services to link virtually any device to a global cellular network. You can get started today with the Blues Note Card. It is the easiest way for developers to add secure, robust, and affordable prepaid cellular to their microcontroller. With just a few lines of code, anything you build can be cloud connected. Learn more at blues.io. Okay, Kevin, let's talk about Amazon. There's been a lot. Just in the last few weeks, but the most recent news so far is this week, Amazon said it is now turning on the Thread capabilities inside of its Echo devices so they can support the Matter smart home interoperability standard. This is great news because up until now, it has only supported Wi-Fi devices and a limited subset of devices. So Amazon is still supporting that limited subset of devices. It is switches, light bulbs, and smart plugs, but now it will support Wi-Fi ones and Thread-based ones. And your devices that are going to do this are going to be your Echo Plus 2nd Gen, your Echo Dot 2nd Gen, your Echo 2nd Gen, and your 4th Gen Echoes. The 4th Gen Echo will work as a Thread border router. The other ones will just be part of a Thread network. They'll be Matter controllers. So if you want the maximum Thread capability and you don't have any other devices in your home acting as a Thread border router, you're going to need to get that Echo 4th Gen.
Yeah, that's the one that's going to connect basically everything together over Wi-Fi and out to the internet. Now,
if you have the Eero devices, you might actually have Thread border routing as part of your Eero devices.
Do you?
But you're going to need the Eero Pro 6 and Eero 6, the Eero beacons, and the Eero Pro with Wi-Fi 5. But your basic Wi-Fi 5 Eero and first generation Eeros are not going to support Thread. So that's a lot.
So why I said, do they really, is because I have an Eero 6 Pro set up here and it has Thread radios built in and I've enabled the Thread radios and I can even see Thread networks, but nothing connects to them. It's always connecting to other Thread networks in my house. So I'm assuming this will all work now?
Well, the answer is maybe. And unfortunately, Amazon launched this yesterday, and I wanted to try it out, but I realized I don't have any Thread-based devices that are supported. So I don't have any Thread-based, and that are also Matter capable. I have Thread-based devices that are not yet updated to Matter. So like I have some Nanoleaf Thread devices. I have Thread in a couple thermostats that will never get supported. So I'm in this like weird world where I'm like, okay, I need a Thread light bulb.
Yeah.
And you have the Nanoleaf Essentials, but I don't.
Right.
And then You have the Eve Thread smart plug, but I don't have that updated to Matter because I got stuck on the whole I need a HomePod.
Correct. To update the firmware, you need an iOS Matter hub.
Yeah, so I need to go get a new Eve plug that has Thread in it because my other
Matter certified already, the one that comes out of the box, so you don't have to update the firmware. That should work with your Amazon.
Yes, and then maybe I'll see if I can see. I mean, I have the 4th gen Echo that does act as a Thread border router, so I don't really need to worry about my Eros. The point is, here's the point. This is terrible. Matter has so far, it's just a very big disappointment. I'm just going to leave it at that.
I agree with what you're saying. And I don't think it's going to be a seamless cross-platform experience till 2024 at the earliest, because every company is doing this in dribs and drabs on their own schedule, their own timeline, and in their own process. Like Amazon didn't just say, hey, okay, we've got Matter support for everything. They're doing it in a staged rollout, and for good reason. Whereas other companies have just said, yep, we're ready right now. So it's very disjointed right now. Very disjointed.
Yeah, they said this was happening at the end of 2019, right? So we're basically looking at 5 years to make this work. This is ridiculous. Anyway, okay, moving on to other things that Amazon is saying. So that was the Amazon Matter launch. So if you have Thread-based devices, now if they're already part of another Thread network, so maybe you've got, like Kevin, you've got iOS devices, they're already part of a Thread network.
Correct.
So you can now see them from Amazon, but they're still going to be in a separate Thread network because that's the way Thread works.
They'll still be on the Thread network they joined when they connected to iOS. Correct. So if you wanted to do them on Amazon's Thread network, you'd have to remove them from the smart home and then add them back using Amazon's mobile app.
Now, you should be able to see them, though, on Amazon.
Not exactly.
Okay.
Things don't just get automatically added to all the platforms that you have.
That's right. They've got to have an integration.
You got to share the pairing code to the other ecosystem, et cetera, et cetera. Yes, because that's not fully rolled out yet either.
Okay. Well, big disappointment. Also, no word yet on when Amazon's going to start supporting other Matter devices. But at this point, who cares? Matter's not fun. All right. Moving on. Amazon late last week, I think it was actually, they sent the email out on Wednesday after we had recorded, I got the email because I own one. They killed off their Halo brand of devices.
Say it isn't so.
Shocker. So if you have a Halo fitness band, they're going to stop charging you a fee for it, like the subscription fee. If you have like a Halo branded device, like that silly Halo Rise Sunrise lamp, good Lord. If you have old stuff, well, all stuff is going to end effective July 31st. And nicely, Amazon will actually proactively delete all your data. If you want to keep your Halo data, like your fitness wearable data or whatever, you actually need to go in your Amazon account and download it. So do that before July 31st, actually before August 1st. But I'm going to tell you July 31st in case you're like a last minute person. So if you bought something, though, in the last 12 months and you're like, but I just bought that Halo Rise Sunrise lamp. It's amazing. Well, you get a full refund from Amazon. So if you bought it in the last year, great. And you can send this stuff in to be recycled. This is super consumer friendly. I love it. I mean, if you're going to shut down something that you just kind of launched, by golly, this is the way to do it. And Amazon has a lot of money, so it makes sense that they would do this. Kudos to them.
I've had a few people ask me about the Halo and should they buy it over, in my neighborhood and whatnot. Well, my take has been friends don't let friends buy Amazon Halo. And that's kind of how I've steered them.
Yeah, I would say this is probably one, there's a lot of cheap fitness trackers on the market. And Amazon did have some really differentiating features. Unfortunately, those features were freaking creepy. And I think what happened is they really focused on privacy because these features were creepy. But just the initial creep factor was hard for people to get over. And the cynical side of me is kind of like, well, maybe because of those privacy features, Amazon also was like, we're not getting the data we really want from these things. Let's move on.
I kind of see Amazon in a situation similar to another company that we don't talk about often, but I'll just mention it because of the analogy here. When Facebook came out with their portal devices, and just to disclose that I had internally reviewed those devices and was paid to do so by Facebook, I mentioned to them, actually, and I mentioned it on the show, they've got a privacy, I don't want to say it, perspective that people don't trust them, right? And therefore, they're not going to put those kind of devices in their homes. And I think to some degree, some people feel the same about Amazon. When you got to the halo and the personal data that it captured, I think that really hurt it.
Yeah.
It's like a stigma.
A stigma.
We don't say that often either. Stigma.
So outside of killing things, adding matter, the biggest probable news for folks who care about Madam A is that Amazon is trying to build a different back-end large language model to power Madam A. So during the company's first quarter earnings call this week, Andy Jassy, Amazon's CEO, was like, Amazon's always had a large language model powering Madam A, but they've decided to make it better because this is going to help make Madam A a better personal assistant. And I agree. Again, we talk about Madam A, we've talked about it in a couple ways. We talk about it as a user interface, which it is. Its voice is a user interface. And when everyone was like, oh, ChatGPT is going to kill Madam A, and we were like, no, ChatGPT is just going to get subsumed into what Madam A is. And that's exactly what's happening here.
And it makes sense to me because the voice smarts in all of the digital assistants has really been, I don't know, kind of stagnant. I mean, we're going on a decade of Siri and then another 8 years of Madam A and Google. And honestly, what we've learned in the past 6 months is that these OpenAI and ChatGPT models are really, really robust and can be trained quickly with a vast amount of information, and they just make for a better experience, or they can. So this makes sense. I think all of these companies that make these digital assistants will be doing this if they're not already.
I think they are. I mean, I think the information had reported that Apple's doing something similar with Siri. Yeah, and I'm sure Google's doing it.
Needs to happen.
Okay. Next up, in the IoT space, chip news, IPO news? I don't know. It's a rough market for IPOs, but SoftBank's ARM is filing for an IPO in the United States. So ARM is a chip design firm. It's like the semiconductor design inside almost all of the smartphones out there and tons of IoT devices through its microcontrollers or through its A class of controllers. This isn't a surprise. When the deal by NVIDIA to buy ARM fell through, we knew that ARM had to do something because all the way back in 2016, when SoftBank spent $32 billion to acquire ARM, we knew it needed a return. And a return is either a sale or an exit through an IPO. That's it. So sale fell through. They're going to try to raise $8 to $10 billion on the public markets. They filed for their IPO confidentially, so we don't have any revenue or exciting numbers to get a sense of how ARM is doing. All we have is ARM saying its revenues are up 28% year over year. Yay. More people are licensing its chip designs, which makes sense because more people are building custom chips.
And they've also been changing their licensing a little bit to raise or improve revenues. So that's going to help going forward.
Yeah. So there we go. It is filed for its IPO. We'll look for more information as that continues. Forrester has released the State of the IoT in the US 2023. This is a report it does, and there's not a lot of surprises. It basically, 4 out of 5 US enterprises are planning to use or using IoT today. This makes sense. The highest adoption is in manufacturing and in pharma, which is also a type of manufacturing. And they're also going to spend more. Yay. And the biggest use cases that we're seeing that I thought was interesting was 32% of the people, so about a third, want to enhance the customer experience in public places. So this could be things like having electronic shelf labels in a retail store. It might simply be like, I don't know. I'm trying to think of other things that IoT does to make life better.
Maybe you have sensors on public transit that can talk back and say, hey, we've got a 6-minute delay now. It's more real time than current methods that they use. There's things they can do.
Yeah. And then the other big thing is around sustainability. 27% are adopting IoT for energy management, 26% for facility management. And facility management is probably also tied to some of the sustainability things, but it can also be tied to economic things like not having more real estate space than you need. So again, not surprising, but useful to know. And the other big issues are their worries. Like, why aren't people? What are they concerned about when adopting IoT? And so the biggest concern, which is almost always the biggest concern, is security. So 28% are worried about security. But then it gets kind of interesting. What do you think, Kevin?
I mean, as you add more sensors and connected devices, things become more complex. And sure enough, the second biggest concern is the increased number of or complexity of customer service requests is the number two thing. So I get that. I mean, you're getting all this data to help customers. Customers are going to figure out that they want an answer to a question that you may not have thought of yet, right? So that makes sense to me. One of the odd concerns, well, not odd to me, I guess, you said security is the top concern. Makes sense, right? Mm-hmm. Privacy issues are like the least concerned. And because it's almost like security, they're concerned about their own devices, their own infrastructure, their own data. And it's almost like, we don't really care about people's data. I'm like, really?
Yeah. Other people, are we picking up more of their data than we should?
Yeah, that's a feature, not a bug.
I will say people are thinking about a couple things that I think are worthwhile. So they're thinking about a lack of authentication and authorization of devices. That is really important. They're thinking about maintaining those devices over time. They're also thinking about data leakage, which is their data. Again, that's kind of part of a security thing, I would say. But it is comforting to me that they're starting to think about like how all this actually gets deployed and managed over a long period of time, when before that hasn't been like a top issue, probably because they haven't had pilots and they didn't understand how tough that can be. So basically the state of IoT in the US is people are adopting it. There are some definite use cases that people have found that seem successful. They contribute to sustainability. They're hopefully contributing to better customer experiences. And as they deploy these, they're figuring out like, oh, crikey, here's some things we probably need to focus more on. Okay, in another oh, crikey moment, let's talk about AirTags and other location tags like Tile. After these were deployed, everyone's like, cool, I can find all my stuff all the time. And then people are like, wait, no, people can find me all the time based on these things. People can put these things on me and find me, even if I don't know. And that freaked people out, rightly so. So what's happened is Apple and Google are now trying to build an industry spec to address unwanted tracking. Yay, how's it going to work, Kevin?
First of all, it's not often these two companies work together, so that that's good to see.
Will it take 5 to 6 years like Matter did?
Well, hopefully not. Google itself doesn't have tracking tags per se. They don't make their own, but their devices, their Android devices, do support the Tiles, the Samsungs, Chippolos, and others. So it's good that they're involved. Basically, as you said, they've got a standard or a spec that they've submitted as an internet draft to the Internet Engineering Task Force. There's going to be a comment and review period over the next 3 months. It seems like we've had 3 shows with these comment and review periods in a row here.
Yeah, it's important.
It is important. It is important.
And by the way, the IETF is a legit standards organization. This isn't some whacked out thing. They do a lot of big standards. So
they're going to work together and release a production implementation of whatever the final standard is for unwanted tracking alerts by the end of this year. And then that standard will be implemented in future versions of iOS and Android, which is where you want it because it's the phones that are going to tell you, hey, you're being tracked or not. So this is good. I believe it doesn't say this in Apple's press release, but I read something to the effect, and I guess they're kind of saying this at the end, that it's coming to Android, that you'll be able to see AirTag data on an Android phone, because currently you have to like physically scan the tag with your Android phone to see anything about it. But if you don't know you're being tracked by one, how would you scan it, right? So it looks like they're opening up. They, being Apple, is opening up a little bit here in order to make this happen, which is, they need to. I mean, there's no other way around it. Technically, they need to. So I think this is great.
Yeah, big fan. So we'll see come the end of this year if it happens. And I look forward to being less annoyed about these things being everywhere and pinging all the time and whatever. All right. Speaking of, though, Google might actually have a tracker, or it might not. We've heard this before.
Right. I'm hoping that we can put this to bed by next week, because next week is Google I/O, the big annual developer event. And they've already kind of announced upcoming things. So you can expect what do they have in the works? They've said they've got the Pixel tablet. They said that last year.
Yeah, we've seen leaks. We've seen leaks of a foldable phone. I feel like we've seen leaks of like a tablet. I think they may have even said something about the tablet. And then we've seen
that was said last year.
Yeah.
Google said there would be a tablet, and we've seen the docking hub for it. So maybe it's a smart display of types. I don't know.
Yeah, so we're being a little cagey here because we're under embargo. But
what we don't know, I can honestly say I know nothing about a Nest tracking or location tag. This is all from somebody who noticed in the Google fonts, of all thing, a material icon for something called Nest Locator Tag. And it looks just like the little Nest tag you had with the old Nest security system, which is no longer a thing. So, yeah, maybe it's coming. I think if it is, we'll hear about it next week, because honestly, they either need to do it or just move on.
Yes. Again, we've reported this out because it's been rumored, I know for sure last year, maybe even the year before. So also, in formal Google Nest news, Abode now has a formal Google Nest integration. So Abode is a DIY security company. They have lots of gear. They historically had participated with the Works with Nest program, but that died way back in the day. And now it is partnered again with Google through its API program to integrate Nest cameras, doorbell cameras, and thermostats into the Abode security platform. So, yay!
And I should note that Abode cameras, you can have no subscription and do DIY monitoring, or they do have subscriptions as well. And the main reason I mention it is because the subscription includes 24/7 video recording, which a lot of people ask us about. They want it. I don't think many cameras offer it for free, but it is an option now if you have a Nest platform and you have Abode.
That does not include the subscription you would have to pay for your Nest cams.
Correct.
So just be aware of that. I know.
I don't know that I would pay for those then, but yeah.
All right. Kevin, you have been testing a device that we talk about this company a lot. We don't talk about this particular device, but you have been testing the Switchbot Hub 2 and its blind tilt product. So do you want to talk about what you've experienced?
I do, and I'm just going to start off right off the bat by saying, if you're not familiar with Switchbot, they kind of make, I'll say, replacements for human hands and fingers, the very mechanized type solutions for things, such as something to flip a light switch up, for example, or press a button for you remotely. I kind of thought it was gimmicky, I'll be honest. But having used these products now, I get it. I see why these products work, and I see why they're appealing. They're less expensive than a native integrated product, a smart product. For example, if you want smart blinds, you're going to spend hundreds of dollars per blind. Whereas with the mechanized thing that opens and closes blinds, it's $70. And the Nest Hub 2, $70. It's very inexpensive by comparison. So the Nest Hub 2, you kind of need that first, because that is what controls a lot of their products. And it did just get a Matter firmware update. You have to have iOS, which is pretty common right now. And that's kind of goes back to Stacy's woes with her Amazon testing. Yeah, sorry. But the Hub 2, it's nice. It's small, very unobtrusive. It has a display, an LED display with temperature, humidity. It has a light sensor in it. It has an IR sensor in it that you can program your IR remote controls with. I did not do that because I don't have any of those. I have all Bluetooth now. It's got 2 on-screen buttons that you can pre-program for a scene or a device to turn it on, turn it off. 2.4 gigahertz Wi-Fi and Bluetooth radios inside. And I set it up with no problems and did the Matter upgrade also with no problems, which is the first time I can say that with a Matter upgrade. So that's good. Then the blind tilt product, I really wanted to try this because I have the horizontal blinds with a rod that you turn to open or close the blinds.
Are those just Venetian blinds? What are those called?
I don't know. I've never been to Venice. I thought Venetian blinds are...
They might be vertical.
Yeah, I think those are the vertical ones that twist,
okay,
open and close. I don't know. The ones that I have are the cheap blinds. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, I was going to say they're the cheap blinds that we all have.
$20 a window. You put the blinds up. They have a pull string to literally lift the blinds up and out of the way, or a rod to tilt them open and closed, right? So the blind tilt does that. It tilts them open and closed, and it does that mechanically. It literally, you attach this to your blinds and you connect it to the rod. And it has a little motor that spins a cog, and that turns the rod. And it works. I don't know what else to say other than it works, because it's, again, very mechanized, but it works. So I was able to use these before I did the Matter upgrade with Amazon, with Google, with IFT, and with Siri shortcuts on iOS. So they're not HomeKit supported. I don't like Siri shortcuts because you manually have to set up a shortcut and name it, and then you tell Siri to kick that off by voice, and it does it. It's just not well integrated. But after the Matter upgrade, now I can say, ask her, it, whatever you want to say, Madam S, to open the blinds, and it does it. It works really well. It's a little noisier than I would have thought, but that's because it's a add-on motorized thing. You know, it looks like an electric toothbrush, no?
Yeah, it really does. You said it was noisier than the Eve blind product that you had tried.
The roller blinds, yes.
The roller blinds.
Yes, it was. I have nothing else to compare it to.
Yeah, I mean, I couldn't tell from the video. I mean, I heard it. I don't know if it's louder than my integrated motors, but my motors are pulling a ginormous swath of fabric. So,
right.
Because my windows are so big. So who knows?
Gotcha. But I think a lot of our audience would like these. I think your average person walking into a Best Buy, Walmart, Target, etc., and says, I want to add these to my smart home, will be intimidated because it comes with a lot of little parts. And those are because there are 4 different options to mount it, because it just hangs there next to the rod and you have to mount it to the top rail of your blinds. And it has little pieces for the rod that you have. You have to measure the rod, and then you have to use the small, medium, or large tube that goes on this for the cog to turn. What I would say is don't be intimidated, because it's really not that hard to set up. They have a video. The video is kind of small and you can't make it bigger on your phone. It's in the app. But if you take your time, you'll figure it out. It's not that bad. And for $70 for this, I mean, you don't even need the hub. You could just control these via Bluetooth from your phone using the Switchbot app if you really wanted to. But once you have the hub, then you can add automations. There's a little solar panel that you affix to this outside behind the blinds. So facing outside, that recharges the battery if you want. There's also a USB charger for inside. But I like the idea of the solar panel because it has a light sensor there, so you can do automations to say, hey, if it's really bright, close the blinds, etc. If you want full integration, you're going to want the hub as well. So honestly, I liked it more than I thought I would. I really do.
There you go. And how much are these?
$69.95 for the hub, and it is $69.95 for each window that you buy the blind tilt.
Okay, so it's not insignificant, but it's also not like break the bank.
It's a lot less than buying true smart blinds.
Yes. Oof. Okay. That concludes this segment of the show. But now it is time for the segment of the show where we hear from you. That's right. It's the Internet of Things podcast hotline, which right now is sponsored by Particle. If you're looking to fast track your IoT project, Particle is offering free dev kits to new users if you're located in the US or Canada. Go visit www.particle.io to claim your free dev kit today. Whoop whoop. All right. So if you would like to give us a call, you can reach us at 512-623-7424. You can ask us your question, or you could just say, hey, we love the show and we want to be entered to win, because every month we give away something exciting. This month's prize is going to be actually, we should announce the winner.
From last month.
Yeah, April's winner. They're winning the NanoLeaf Essentials Light Bulb Kit, and that is actually Shane from last week's question. Was it last week's question?
It was.
Yay! So congratulations, Shane. And thank you for your question. It was a great one. Okay. Now, this month, for the month of May, I'm going to throw out another NanoLeaf product because they're fun. We're going to do the NanoLeaf Small Triangle Starter Kit, just because I've got one lying around and I think it'd be great. So if you give us a call at 512-623-7424, you will be entered to win a Small Triangles Starter Kit from NanoLeaf. And we might answer your question on the show, which is always exciting. So this week, we have a question from Greg about level locks. Let's hear it.
Hi, Stacy and Kevin. My name is Greg. Wanted to say I love your show. Been listening for a year or so now. And I wanted to ask you about level locks. I bought a level bolt, which is a Bluetooth lock that fits inside an existing lock. It just changes the actual bolt and makes it smart. And there had been a story a few months ago that there was a thread radio built into this that level was going to turn on for us, but that seems to have gone away, or haven't heard much about that lately. So I was just wondering if you have any insights or any contacts with Level and find out if that is going to continue to be the case. Because I'm not happy with the Bluetooth. I would like to see it respond a little faster, and I'm hopeful that the thread radio would respond faster than Bluetooth. Thanks again. Love the show.
So Greg is playing the waiting game, just like we are for many products.
When it comes to Matter. So we reached out to Level just to be like, hey, maybe they're going to tell us something new and exciting. They're not. The response we got from them is all Level locks currently have hardware that is compatible with Matter. Thread is going to be supported in future releases because of that, but they're going to not tell you the timing right now. They're going to tell you later.
Don't be offended. They didn't tell us either.
Yeah. It's not just you, Greg. It's all of us. Okay, so that is a short answer, and it's not a very satisfying one, but keep waiting, Greg. We're all waiting with you for our favorite devices to get Matter.
I certainly would not reinvest in a new lock if my existing lock does have thread potential, so to speak.
Yeah, keep it. Plus, it's a good lock. It's a good lock, Greg. Okay. That is an easy answer. And remember, if you would like us to give you an easy or a complicated answer, you can give us a call at 512-623-7424, and you will be entered to win those Nanoleaf Small Triangles Starter Kit. All right, that concludes this segment of the show. But stay tuned for our guest, Jonathan Beery of Goliath. He is the founder and CEO, and the company just raised $4.6 million in a tough environment. And we're going to be talking about that, plus a big deep dive on what it means for the embedded world when we add connectivity to everything and talking about that kind of modernization effort. So stay tuned. But first, a message from our sponsor. This week's sponsor is Computex. Hey everyone, we are taking a quick break from the Internet of Things podcast for a message from our sponsor. This week's sponsor is Computex, and I have with me Tessa Lin, who is the marketing and PR manager at Computex. Tessa, welcome to the show.
Oh, Stacy, thank you for having me on the show. Happy to be here.
Well, I'm excited. So why don't you tell us what Computex is and share some insights on what we can anticipate from the show?
Computex is one of the largest and most influential technology conferences in the world. It's held annually in Taipei, Taiwan. It's like a grand symphony of technology where the world's most innovative minds come together to showcase their latest and greatest creations. This year, our show will be from May 30th to June 2nd with a theme of Together We Create. The show will explore diverse topics, including high-performance computing, artificial intelligence applications, next-gen connectivity, hyperreality, innovations and startups, and sustainability.
All right. And what makes this year's event special?
Yeah, we want to bring our visitors a fresh outlook every year. This year, there will be over 1,000 exhibitors from 20 countries to showcase their new products, including ASUS, Delta, Gigabyte, InWin, MSI, Quanta Cloud Technology, Realtek, and more. And at the heart of Computex lies its keynotes. Will feature dynamic speeches from CEOs and top executives from some of the world's most influential tech giants like NVIDIA, Qualcomm, NXP, Acer, and Supermicro. We also have Computex Forum this year, The topics will cover metaverse, advanced chip technology, advanced semiconductor application, and technological sustainability. International speakers from related fields will discuss hot topics, hot trends in the global technology industry.
So what happens if I can't make it to Taipei?
And if you can't attend in person, Computex keynote and forum will also be live streaming or found video on demand on our YouTube channel. We also focus on Innovex. It's a dedicated exhibit created exclusively for brilliant startups. It's the perfect platform for innovators from around the globe to showcase their groundbreaking ideas. And when the show is approaching, we will release more, so stay tuned.
This all sounds really exciting. So where can our listeners go to find out more?
Oh, we create link for our listeners. Please visit www.computextaipei.com.tw/StacyOnIoT to learn more about Computex 2023.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the Internet of Things podcast. This is your host, Stacey Higginbotham, and today's guest is Jonathan Berry, who is founder and CEO of Goliath. Hello, Jonathan. Welcome back to the show.
Hi, Stacey. Thanks for having me.
Okay, Jonathan, and first up, can you tell me what it is that Goliath does?
So Goliath is an IoT company that provides a platform to help product and hardware engineers to build secure, scalable, and innovative infrastructure very quickly. And unlike other options in the space, which there are a ton, Goliath sits in the middleware part of the space, making it easier for developers to manage devices and route data securely and efficiently.
I am so excited to have you because you've done, well, two things. I don't know if I'm jealous of both or I admire both, but we'll go with one of them I'm jealous of, one of them I admire you for. So first is y'all raised $4.6 million recently in a really tough funding environment. So congratulations there. Do you want to just tell us quickly, what are you going to do with all that money?
Yeah, well, thanks, Stacey. It was tough, but we found the right partners, and kind of the theme that we were going in out of last year into this year is really around resource efficiency. That's important for both the environment, but also for the resources we all have. And the goal of this funding was to expand some of our core focuses for 2023. In particular, we built a nice ecosystem in early days around Goliath, around the chipset partners and data providers. And part of this money is going to expand our ecosystem. We actually just announced a partnership with Nordic Semiconductor. In particular, a lot of our customers use their NRF9160 for cellular. So getting more of that and more integrations along the way. The second thing is understanding our customers. We've built out some core capabilities to make embedded engineers' lives and product teams' lives easier, and basically building out more of that. And lastly, in the theme of building out better functionality, making lives easier, we've been building out what we call reference designs. These are example applications that are end-to-end built around our partners on the device and cloud side, as well as Goliath, for use cases like asset tracking and soil monitoring, and building out more of these reference designs to make it available to customers.
Nice. Okay. And we're not going to talk too much about the money, but if you want to read about it, you can at the site. But the second reason you're here, and this is the reason I'm incredibly jealous of you, is because you were at Embedded World way earlier this year and I wasn't. And I'm really so mad at myself because everyone said this was a great show. A lot of cool things happened. So you're going to tell me, Jonathan, what happened in Embedded World that was so cool. And what it means for the IoT. And we'll even talk about some of your complicated feelings about the IoT.
Yeah.
So, quick take on Embedded World. What made it cool? What was exciting?
Well, what makes it cool, this is my second time at Embedded World, is it's just a bunch of nerds who nerd out about hardware and connectivity and connectors and plastic enclosures. It's pretty rare space. There's one aspect which stood out around TinyML, or just Edge ML in general. So machine learning on devices as opposed to in the cloud. Last year, it was there, and people were doing demos, and they were real working demos, but they weren't anchored in, I would say, use cases that at least we see. So they were fabricated to match what marketing material is. But this year felt more real. Like it was actually part of the functionality of a device, as opposed to a shiny object we sprinkle upon our connected machines, which is cool to see. For example, we went to the Edge Impulse booth, and they had this new device they've been working on, the reference design, and it was exactly similar to a demo we had at our booth, but without with the machine learning elements on it, an industrial controller or something like that. And so it felt like we're maturing on that space, which it's exciting to see. The other things that we saw, and probably more from where we were sitting in the conference show, is not reinventing the wheel as much. So you might call it consolidation, or the idea that the embedded world is really, have been anchored in, I got to invent everything myself. I got to write the device drivers from scratch. I can't use an operating system. I got to write bare metal. I got to develop my own IP and license that into some custom flavor of a wireless protocol. But it felt like people are realizing that's not where the value is created for embedded systems. And we're seeing a lot more reuse and open source and building upon other people's technologies, which was also really good and refreshing to see.
Awesome. So let's talk about that kind of second thing, which is this idea of not reinventing the wheel. Because I've been covering this now for 10 years. And one of the consistent sub-themes is this IT-OT divide. And we've seen a lot of the OT folks move closer to needing IT skills and looking for solutions that are more common from the IT world. Is that kind of what you're talking about when you talk about not reinventing the wheel, which is this adoption by OT of some of the IT technologies?
Yeah, I think so. And maybe more in the embedded world event, it was, let's use a similar operating system. Let's use a similar radio technology.
So can you tell me what historically used to happen so we can understand what is happening now?
Yeah, I mean, embedded, because it's such a complicated space and, you're working with constraints on the hardware side or other forms of budgeting, everyone reinvented the wheel. Like, if you were building a wireless lighting controller for, say, street lighting, you would maybe design your own chip, then write your own device drivers to connect to the light bulb. You might write your own wireless protocol on top of some radio you licensed, and then invent your own security on top of it. And so the amount of effort to create that light bulb system was a lot. Probably was defensible or differentiated. Maybe it was even more performant than if you would have got something off the shelf. But that means the rollout of those lighting controllers and streetlights is, stymied by the last decade. That's why we don't see a lot of industries having the growth we've expected for IoT. The shift, and I've seen it speed up over the last 5 years, is, let's not write our own device driver for a sensor that we bought from a vendor. Let's use their driver. And let's not write our own networking stack. Let's use maybe an open source one. And even to the point of commoditizing the things that are furthest away from the light bulb itself, right? Like even the modem might have some software already written. I think that gets to the point, what you've been covering. I don't know if we're there yet, unfortunately, Stacy, of closing the divide between OT and IT. But instead of focusing on the stuff that's not important to the actual end product, the user, the building, or whatever we're trying to connect, well, then we have more time to actually make that process better. Like when I was at WeWork working on our connected device platform, a lot of our effort was on technology and low-level integrations and cloud services. But I spent most of my time talking to the security team, the ops team, the construction team, the architecture team, because most of the challenges they had was not on the technology side, because we were taking care of it for them, was how do we do planning? How do we do installation? How do we deal with someone accidentally installing the wrong thing in the wrong place? What happens when there's a flood and our devices are broken, and how do we replace them? And we had to go build software for them too, but we were so focused on the first half of the problem that we never really built out, at least when I was there, the technology to help the OT side of that, the house. Now, my dad is actually an embedded engineer, so this is near and dear to my heart. This embedded world of weird. It feels esoteric. It was like very highly defined problems that you were solving with electronics. One of the things that was so essential was being performant, as you said, security, and then resilient. And a lot of times they look over at the IT side and they're like, this like 4 nines is not good enough for us. We're building our own stuff because it has to work all the time, 100%, right? 1,000,000 nines. I don't know. So has the IT side gotten better? Have they just realized that the economics, like what has changed? The IT side has definitely gotten better. And I think the challenge is folks like your dad who build really resilient systems. The moment you add connectivity to it, you've now created a backdoor. That's from their perspective. Or if you think of it from the IT side, it's like, now we can reach out and get information about what's happening on the field. But the need now is that 2 teams are actually having to work together. And, when you're building an IoT product, as opposed to a device or an app, it's really the integration of the two. And so designing systems such that you've to either take into consideration the IT world or the device world is now critical. We've read about the aquariums and the Target HVAC systems. That's because they weren't designed such that taking in consideration the IT side and the OT side as one. And that necessitated the need to change how we build things. The hardware folks have to think about the cloud and how does this thing talk to the cloud and what can I actually do to maybe make it more secure from our side? And vice versa, the cloud side has to understand, well, what is this device doing and what can it actually operate on? And where is the threat from our side, which is getting better?
That's what I'm about to ask you about. What are some indications that this is actually now happening? Because I've talked about this happening for a really long time, and we see like little dribs and drabs, like the IT and the OT side are at least like fighting, which means they're talking to each other, right? Yay! But this is old stuff and it's going to be there for like 30 years. So we've got a backlog, but how do we know things are changing?
Well, I would say there's probably some like leading indicators and lagging indicators. We definitely are seeing consolidation on technology. Within, I'd say 5 years ago, there were a huge array of embedded systems, operating systems in particular, RTOSs, that were being chosen, integrated, chipset vendors were deciding to use them, and you had to build this entire, as an engineer, knowledge base of every single one. And that's not so true anymore. Especially on the open source side, we're seeing fewer and fewer options, and not because people are not choosing them, but rather there's consolidation. And so more people are investing their shared resources on making RTOSs better. We're big fans of Zephyr. There's also FreeRTOS and other ones. And similarly, people are not deploying custom 2.4 gigahertz radio technologies anymore. They're going to use Bluetooth or Thread. And so we're seeing that as, I would say, a leading indicator that there's convergence in a little bit of collaboration. How are you going to actually use this custom 2.4 gigahertz thing with a smartphone? Well, it only speaks Bluetooth, so maybe we'll just use Bluetooth as an example. Even taking legacy systems that have done a certain way, like we were talking before the call around PLCs and how certain companies are now making them simplified or more modern using, like Arduino has theirs, and we talked about Siemens virtual PLC. That is clearly not because of the hardware folks who want to virtualize things. It's because there's value for both the operators and the OT team to now have upgradable and more compute intensive systems to do more stuff. So I think that is the sort of like that leading indicator. The lagging indicator is something that I think you and I have talked on and off of. We're so focused on IoT and chips and RTOSs and radios, but companies and people, they care about products. They care about business problems. And for me, I really want the concept of IoT just to fade away into the background, even though I spend all day, every day talking about it and thinking about it and working on it. That would be, to me, the sign that we're stopped focused on Wi-Fi 6 and this release of Thread spec and more safety, reliability, savings, environmental impacts.
Well, this is why I talk about IoT being a culture change. And the culture change isn't people having to know anything about the cloud or what version of Wi-Fi they're working on. It's that when you have all the data available to you, right? Infinite amounts of potential data, and it's easy. How do you think about building processes to react to it, to make sure that your people can access it, do things with it, and then also that they know where the risks are in having that. So maybe you don't share your work phone with your friend because you have your entire plant operation on it now. So I know you want IoT to fade away, but it sounds like you're really talking about it just becoming enmeshed in everyday life.
Yeah. And when I see a device, a product, even in our homes, I see that as a smoke detector. I see that as a plant controller. I see that as a trash can. And it's made better because the IT integrated on the device side and the cloud capabilities, intelligence that we get from extracting that data. But at the end of the day, it should just be a better trash can. It should be a better smoke detector. But we're still focused on that part and not on better waste management, better reduction in petroleum usage for rolling out trucks to check trash cans that are not full. So we haven't crossed that part of the valley, as it were. And
part of that, like you mentioned, is the fact that a lot of these are stuck in old school industrial kind of embedded practices on the hardware side. There's also fears about security and hacking. So what's being done there that will change this? There's a knowledge gap around security, and there are security experts, and
they work at very few companies, or they work as consultants in very small companies in themselves. And really, the hardware that we have available to us on the microcontroller side, the edge computing side, is massively powerful when it comes to security. Depending on how you read the DNS attacks, they were as a result of these IP cameras that were exploited that had physical hardware security built in, yet they weren't programmed into the device. And there's good reasons, because the companies who make those devices didn't put in the effort to write the software that can use the hardware capabilities. And so we're actually almost in a renaissance period when it comes to security, where our devices are becoming cost-effective devices, have security. People just need to have either tools or the knowledge to take advantage of them. And a lot of the chipset vendors are coming out with crazy bank-level security on a $2 microcontroller.
And the people who need to take advantage of this, these are the developers of the devices, or are these the end users?
Oh, it's on us who make the things. The end users, your data, your privacy, your security, we can only ask of them so much, right? We have to give them the tools to be safe with their data or secure with their systems. But it's our responsibility as the creators to do as much as we can to make those barriers as low as possible to be safe online and with their devices. And going back to the DNS IP cameras, it was the company who sold the camera hardware probably should have written the basic embedded security on the devices so it didn't get copied and pasted. And same thing, at Goliath, we focus heavily on security, making it almost impossible to build a device that can't be secured as it talks to Goliath, right? Trying to make that turnkey and integrated. And we're seeing that more and more from the hardware vendors themselves. A lot of the microcontrollers that are going into our smart and industrial systems have built-in hardware accelerated cryptography. They have secure elements. They have ways to even manufacture them with certificates before you even put it into your board. So we're seeing that inch forward. Now the software and the knowledge of how to use those components is the last piece. And I think we're going to see an uplift in security as a result.
Now, this is a common reason the OT folks hate the IT side, because they're like, oh, it's almost security by obscurity, or security by being air gapped, right? All of that is going away. So
yeah.
I also think, though, as we add more of the IT tools, the open source tools, the existing network stacks, then we're risking supply chain attacks. And what is the solution? How do you answer an embedded, old school, hardcore embedded engineer who's like, what about that?
Yeah, there's a lot for the embedded world to learn from the IT world. We do a lot of training, so free training for engineers. We actually see a lot of electrical engineers trying to get into embedded software and expand their skill sets, or their company has tasked them to learn IoT. And we have to teach them also things like Git for version control of their software, because that's not common in the embedded system. We have to teach them things like visual integrated development environments, IDEs, which a 5-year-old who learns how to program a web app learns how to use. And not to make fun of the practices, but there's reasons why software for embedded systems was not designed that way. They just didn't exist, and you had to get proprietary software for very specific reasons, but it's catching up. And, as an example, how does this IT world deal with supply chain attacks? Well, there's security scanners, and there's continuous integration, and there's companies who provide tooling who can test your software in a million permutations that could, in theory, actually be more secure than if you were to go the old school way. So I think bringing the software and the kinds of things we build for embedded systems to leverage some of the modern IT practices will actually make software more secure, more resilient, and actually manage supply chain attacks better than the old school way.
I like it. All right. Well, Jonathan, thank you so much for coming on the show today.
Thanks. It was fun.
Okay, so thanks everyone for listening to this week's Internet of Things podcast. I really appreciate it, as does Kevin. And if you want to find out more information on the Internet of Things, you can find it at my free weekly newsletter that comes out every Friday. You can sign up for that at www.stacyoniot.com/newsletter. Or you can just visit the website for all of those stories published a little bit later. Thanks for listening, and have a great week.